I've just made a cup of coffee, and while I was making it I was talking to David Cameron in my head, which, you know, if you want to, you can say that makes me crazy, but I don't give a shit, because it doesn't. It just makes me someone who expresses themselves to themselves, because they spent a lot of time in isolation, and that's actually been quite good for me. I was actually calling him beloved David Cameron. It's not something that comes easy, feeling a kindred spirit to David Cameron, because he is so not like me, and he would probably see me and think, oh my fucking god, what is that? But I don't care. Still, he is a fellow human being. And I've actually forgotten what I was going to say. I was going to ask him some questions, very much like I would like to ask the man who raped me what makes him think that it's okay to completely override another person's autonomy, to justify their own ends, to meet their own needs, to not give a shit about what the other person feels. And actually, I didn't know I was going to say anything along those lines, because the things I was thinking when I was making the cup of coffee were far more loving, and I had no one to express them to, and I hadn't got the camera ready, and I wanted to express them. But that does boil down to a similar sort of conversation that I'd want to have with him, actually. I wanted to ask him, does he actually understand the concept of how we can create a society that loves and cares for each other and accepts each other for who they are, and how that often leads to far less people who are actually really rocking the boat and being very disagreeable, such as people who don't work for their own living, or people who carry guns and shoot each other, and gain delight in tormenting others, partly because that's what they've grown up with. You've grown up in the world that you grew up in. Your world's completely different to mine, and I'd probably feel like a fish out of water in your world, just as you'd feel like a fish out of water in my world. But why do we attack each other's worlds? Why? Why do we insist that each sort of grouping of similar sort of people that see the world in similar sorts of ways, why do we try and insist that they're more like us? It's exactly the same with families, societies, with any relating. When we see a difference between our ethics and the other person's ethics, and then we start attacking each other, we create a place where we cannot find peace. When we see each other as products of our environments, and free to buck against that, but our environments, if they're caring, and if they're sharing and inclusive of the weak and the strong, the powerful, and I've already said that, well, inclusive of all, we remove a lot of the problems from the world. We relieve people of trying to fit into something that they know they don't belong to. of people being pigeonholed in sections of society, that they actually, every section of society has as much variety as there are sections in society. There's variety within the variety within the variety. And once we encourage people to freely express from their heart rather than from the disgust of some other person's inability to cope, and the compassion of that inability to cope and the understanding of why there is that inability to cope, and encouragement for them to go in their own time into change, because they're being given the opportunity to change, not bullied into change, because bullying people into change only doesn't break the very few. And I think that's what I'd like to say to you.